JCT for education.
Buenas noches, good evening. This is Juank Tamayo, JCT for education for you. And today, this evening, on a Tuesday, April 20th, I have an extraordinary guest, and we are very honored to have her on our live. Remember, this video will be housed on IGTV. It will also be housed on YouTube, and actually, you guys can come back and watch it later on. We know we have people in and out, and I want to say hello to everyone. And here is our guest. We have here Valerie Dourdin. Let me invite her over from Bogota. Live with JCT for Education, Juank Tamayo. So we're waiting for her to join us, and thank you for watching.
How you doing?
¿Cómo estás?
Bien, gracias.
Bien, bien. I know that you've been super busy. If you guys are watching right now, Valerie, you've been awake since what, 3:30 in the morning?
Well, yeah, 4:30.
4:30. And how many hours are we sleeping on average? 4 or 5?
No. I need to sleep 8.
8?
It's a must.
Okay, that's not bad. So for those of you watching, Valerie works for Save the Children. And Valerie, I was actually watching your Instagram, 1.2 million followers from around the world. What about, yes, it's crazy, absolutely crazy. How many countries are you guys represented for Save the Children?
God, that is a good question. I'm not sure. I'm not sure. I think it's more than 70 or 80.
Okay.
Save the Children have started with the Red Cross movement, so we are 100 years old.
Yes.
So you have the Red Cross movement who started for soldiers and for adults, and then the Save the Children started with a woman who started it for children. So we are at the same time. We started at the same time.
Okay, so you're from France. Where about in France?
I'm from Paris. I'm the worst Parisian ever. My sister will be a best representative of Paris than I am.
Why? Why do you say you're the worst?
Because I never liked it and I left as soon as I could.
Okay. So when did you feel that call to leave the city, the country? When was it?
I turned 25 in Croatia, starting in the war in Bosnia. So I started,
Okay.
I was 25.
Okay.
But I
And
always
then,
lived between France and Spain.
okay. So one of the best memories from elementary school in Paris, and then we move on.
That is a good question. I have no clue. I'm very bad with memories. It's like when you move to one job to another and a country to another, it's like you leave the past behind and you start again. So I guess in 20 years when I will get really, really old, I will come back to you with that question.
Okay. So we will see what type of social media platform we're going to be using. I don't think it's going to be Instagram. It will be something crazy, but I take you up on that. I will set up an invitation in 20 years. So will be year 2041 where we're going to be meeting. So stay tuned.
Good.
I've been in education for 27 years, and I work for a couple higher education institutions in the US. But my call for traveling around the world has been since I was a little child. That's why I asked you that question. And I always wanted to work for the United Nations. I didn't, and you did. So we're fulfilling here. And you left. So we will talk about that. How many countries you've been to in your lifetime?
Oh, I had that in one of the wonderful apps. I think it's about 25 or 28.
Okay, and
but working is about 11 to 12.
Okay, so I've been all over the world myself, and I'm passionate about the topic that you deal with. You're more courageous because you are in the trenches, looking for that. I've been around for education, bringing students to the United States. Actually, we had kids from refugee camps and so forth. But Valerie, 1985 hit November 13. And what happened on November 13 of 1985?
Well, Armero happened. Colombia, biggest emergency and humanitarian catastrophe that happened in Colombia. A whole town disappeared under under rocks and mud. And for people who have my age or maybe yours, maybe you remember it, is it the day that a girl was in the mud until up to her neck. Her name was Mayra,
Mm-hmm.
and Mayra was standing on her aunt's body, and she was with the house on her, and there was this very young guy from the Red Cross who stayed with her for 3 days until she died.
Mm-hmm.
And it was on all TVs. And I remember I was doing my first job or pasantía, how you call that in English?
Internship.
Internship, thank you. And we were watching it on TV. At that time, you didn't have the TV 24/7 or tablets and all that. And I remember looking at it and thinking that is what I want to do one day. Is I want to be working with the Red Cross and doing this kind of job. And actually, when I came in 1997 for the first time in Colombia to close the office of the Red Cross, the French Red Cross, I met the guy, and he was his last week in the Red Cross. He was moving on. He was a student actually when he was with Omaida, and he moved on to something else.
Okay, you got me thinking, because in 1985 I remember exactly that November 13 what I was 14 years of age, and I was at my grandma's home, and it was on national television, and it was one of the, actually it was black and white. I don't think my grandma had the color TV, so it was black and white, and I almost teared up because it was so sad. That tragedy had a huge impact not only in Colombians but around the world, and I'm very. It's sad because I remember the TV was, typing all the names of the people, over 30,000 people wiped out completely because of the volcano and the eruption. So Omaira is as a person herself is gonna live with us for the rest of our lives, and it was one of the calamities that we have in Colombia, of many of them. So reading a little bit about you, and please, when you wanna see Valerie, she has an incredible TED talk. Valerie Dourdin. My French is not that great, Valerie, so I do apologize. But Valerie's been around the world. I had the luxury to travel for the university. But Valerie, how did you pick regions? So you went from, let's say, Colombia, Cambodia, Malaysia, Nepal. Were you like, did you pick the location, or you were picked to go to that location?
It's a little bit of both. Actually, I'm very lucky, because usually when you start in a region, it's very difficult to change. And I've been in 4 continents of the 5. And I started with Bosnia. Bosnia was very near to the heart of European,
Yes.
for many historical reasons. And I started there, and then I stopped and I work in a bank. Never do that again. And I spoke Spanish. No, so I went to Africa because they needed French speakers. So I went to Africa, and I was a camp manager for 110,000 refugees in former Zaire. And then suddenly I came back and said, "Oh, but you speak Spanish, right? And you don't have a lot of French who speaks languages in general." But in my time, I said, "Yeah, I do speak Spanish." And then they sent me to Colombia, saying, "Can you go and close the office?" And instead of closing the office, I got more project. The office reopened, and we got a lot of project. I got married to a Colombian, so a lot of things happened during that time. And then one thing you had at that time is that you had to change country every 2 years. So whatever you did, it was 2 to 3 years. So then I moved to the International Red Cross, and they sent me to Nepal, and I applied. So most of the time you do apply, but it's true that usually you are confined to one place. But I had something. At that time, not a lot of people did, is I did spoke 3 languages, so that was easy for me to move from one place to another. So that's why I was able to do so many countries.
Okay, so how do you, when you are in Colombia, let's move fast forward year 2021. So there was a peace treaty, and now here we are again. What sometimes we don't get the real projection from the media, where is the newspapers, where is the television. We've seen an escalation of violence in Colombia. Tell us, Valerie, you're in the front trenches. What's going on right now in Colombia?
Well, I'm not in the trenches. Colombian people are in the trenches.
Okay.
One thing that I have and we have as expat is when something get really bad, we can leave because it's not our country, which people from the country can't do. So Colombians are in the trenches. I'm just here to support. What is happening is usually what happened after a peace accord and a peace process is that the violence go up because the armed groups are dissolved, and when you usually have a head of those armed group in every places. This head goes, have agreed to the peace accord or are moving somewhere else, or so the whole system collapse, and there is a lot of little heads, and those little heads want to have power again. So they're trying to get the power, and if the government doesn't take over the power over those regions and those areas, then there is more collapse. Then there is more small lords and that make the laws and decide, and they can be really aggressive, and is what is happening in Colombia right now. So 6 years into the process, the peace process, the government, I think, had difficulties to take over some of those spaces that they should have been taken, which is one. Two, in Colombia, you have different things are converge to make it so difficult, which is drugs, still here, still going on, still more coca than before. The COVID haven't helped. The COVID have done that the government is not as present because we are confined. We've been confined for 7 months, and the armed group have not been confined. So they have taken more power over what the state should have been taken power. Also, there is a poverty that is going up here and everywhere else. So that doesn't help either. So you have young people who have really two choices: go to the army or go to the armed group. Not a lot of choices. So all that make it more and more difficult, and we see that violence in Colombia is going up because of that, because the armed group are still there, because the dissidents or the FARC are still there, because the LNA is getting stronger, and there is this idea that Colombia is now in part of the OCDE, is a middle-income country and should move on, but you can't move on if the whole country doesn't move on. Well, is what I feel.
Okay. Valerie, we get a question here. First of all, you're getting a lot of hand waving here and people saying they're very proud of you. And question goes, can you please tell us about your experience in Rwanda at the time of the genocide? I want to learn about how the crisis was dealt with.
It's never well dealt with. And one thing I always say, and a friend that we have in common, which is Leo, which I think is here too, is always ask me to say in his classes, is that no war is because of religion or belief. It's always economic. It's always economic. Now they can sell it to you as a religion issue or as a belief issue or socialist again, non-socialist, but it's always economic. So Rwanda haven't changed. It's not different. And of course it was not well dealt because there was a genocide. I came after the genocide. I was a camp manager in Zaire, and I went to Rwanda after most of the refugees went back. But the issue of Rwanda, Burundi, Zaire come from much before, during the colonies, and the way that those colonies was dealt with by the Belgium. We haven't done a very good job as French. That's why I have decided a long time ago I will not work in the former French colony, because they will tell me how bad we were, and they will be right. So it was not very well dealt since much before, and it comes from how the whole issues of Belgium was imposed also to Rwanda. And during the genocide, it was not very well dealt with. I think French has something to do with it, but also Belgium and others have something to do with it. And the only thing I was there for is to try to find a solution for the people who end up, in camps. The issue is a lot of people who end up in camps were the genociders, and it was not easy every day to work with that.
Okay, so coming back to Colombia right now as Director of Emergency for Save the Children, can you walk us through about your job description? What do you do?
Well, what I do is I support a huge and amazing team of Colombian people who work in 5 areas. We work in protection. child protection, education in emergency, in health, and specifically in sexual and reproductive health for pregnant women and adolescents, men and women. We work with WASH, and we do a cash transfer program. So my job is to make their job easier.
Okay.
And to make sure that they have the tool that they need to be able to do the job, and also to kind of continue finding fundings to make sure that they can do their job.
When you were traveling, you saw the conflicts, let's say Tutsis and Hutsus. You mentioned on your TED Talk that your job is to provide food for the children, not to solve the conflict, because you will have to meet with a lot of the rebels and the higher ranks. How do you do it when you were there to say, okay, I need food for our children, I need your permission to go through? How was it's called conflict resolution? How do you deal with that?
Well, I think what helped me a lot at that time, I was working with the Red Cross, is the principle that we have to work with and under. As I say, I'm not here to do politics. I'm not part of the politics because I'm not from that country, and I will never understand. And one thing that my grandmother, who married a Spaniard and teach me a long time ago, is you don't talk politics, you don't talk religion, and usually you don't talk football when you are in South America. So if you keep this rule, and the humanitarian world is also, I'm not here to know if you're right or wrong. I'm here to make sure that the people who need the food, the children who need the food, get the food. So it's always to come back to that discussion, to not getting yourself grabbed into discussion that are not yours to deal with or to find a solution, but you are there for a very specific reason.
Okay.
And is to save life. So when you stick to it and you stick with your impartiality and neutrality, then you can get the job done.
Were your life at risk at some of those countries, including our country, Colombia?
Yes, many times, but I had the chance to, first of all, to have a lot of, we have people who deal with security, to have been well trained, and being a woman sometimes helps, sometimes it doesn't, sometimes it does help. And also you have this kind of instinct kicked in. And when you listen to it, you take care of yourself and you learn not to put yourself into danger. So there's people who look for danger, and it's not because I do the job I do that I'm looking for the danger, for being in danger, but it's really to do the job that needs to be done for people who need that. But as I say, you told me that I was very brave, but I'm not the one who's brave. Is really the people from the country who are really brave to do the job they do. Because I was evacuated twice because I was a foreigner and because I was a woman. And you can always get out of the country, but the people in the country cannot go out. And I think they are the brave ones.
I absolutely agree with you. And with all my travels in 89 countries, I could see that. Now the question is, do you think that there is the same pattern or behavior from the people that are hurting their own people? So meaning that when you went from Nepal to Cambodia, to Colombia, to Rwanda, did you find a pattern with the people that are suppressing their own people?
There is this belief that what you do is right. And I remember having this discussion with students here in Colombia who were saying, but the guerrilla have said that they never recruited youth, and it's not true, and we know it's not true. And I'm like, you're right, it's not true, and we all know that. But it's different for somebody who has been for 20 years in the guerrilla, in the jungle, and have believed for 20 years that what he or she was doing was the right thing. So it's not like, they sign the peace process, you get out of the jungle, you get into the normal life, and all what you believe for 20 years doesn't exist anymore. Because it's where, we're funded by our belief, by the belief that your parents give you, your teacher give you, your mentors give you, the people you work with. And if you have 20 years of believing that what you have been told for 20 years is the truth, it takes a little bit of time to change that. But it's based a lot on fanatism. It's based a lot on, we're talking about education is what is going to change things, but it's also when you're in this kind of setup that they're telling you that you have to take arms and to combat the government, the establishment, and you've been told that, and you're 14, 13, 12, and you've been told that for years and years and years. It takes time. So yes, the pattern is fanatism for sure. Certainly corruption. The fact that people want to make a lot of money because you go to fanatism to corruption. As I say, every war I've seen are based more on economics reason than anything else.
Valerie, and you're saving, I mean, save the children. How many children in Colombia are right now at risk to being recruited by the armed by the rebels? If you guys have its statistics, what percentage are at risk?
No, it's very difficult in terms of recruitment to have a statistic. It's extremely difficult. I think we're all trying to do that, but it's difficult. We know that, for example, you have right now 12 million children at risk of dropping out of school.
12
That is
million in Colombia.
12 million. Because of the
Wow.
COVID, you have 12
Okay.
million children that are on the verge of dropping out of school. So that is very dangerous, and it's a way of recruiting for, whatever bad thing. But having to can tell you how much could be recruited or being recruited, or percentage is very difficult to say.
Wow, 12 million children are at risk of dropping out of school because of the pandemic. And do you see a mechanism from the government to save almost all these children from that collapse?
Yes, I think it's a concern. We as Save the Children, we have a campaign. We have changed our campaign. We had a very strong campaign on protection of children, and we have changed it to a campaign that's called Safe Back to School. And we very, very quickly moved to that campaign because we understand and we are convinced that if we don't do something about it, not only in Colombia but all over the world, children are going to drop out of school, are going behind. There is depression. If you think of it today, a kid who is 3 years old doesn't know anything else than mask, social distancing, a video, and haven't seen his grandparents or the family of their parents for 3 years. Because it was before 1 year, usually you keep the children at school. They've been a year and a half of a social distancing, mask, and all that. So what is going to happen for those children when they start school when they're 4 or 5?
Yes.
Today, you have how many million of children of 3 years old right now have only lived under COVID?
Yes. And Valerie, what percentage of those 12 million children are not eating more than one meal per day?
I won't be able to give you a number like that, but it's a big number. It's a huge number, and we see it every day. We're working in La Guajira, we're working in Cali, and we're seeing two things: is a lot of children are not eating every day because parents have lost their job, and violence against women and children are on the high, and it's not only in Colombia.
Absolutely. And I mean, you've been in Colombia for 20 years right now, correct?
In and out, yeah.
In and out of Colombia. I mean, let's go into a macro, and it's not getting involved into politics or anything like that. But what is the solution, Valerie, for this? If there is a solution right now?
For what? For the conflict?
No, for the conflict,
school,
no. It's from if you have the powers, the means to save these 12 million children from dropping out of school, for bringing food into that table, what will be the solution from a social economical perspective?
There is many things that need to be done. Better solidarity, that's for sure. Colombia is a country I've lived for 60 years under a conflict, and can have issues with solidarity. Usually in Colombia, you trust your family, but you don't trust a stranger. And there is this kind of the way that people have been brought up for many, many years. I think there is a need to better access to school and to public school and public university. There is no social system in Colombia. In my country, in France, there is a social system. All the people who have to quarantine had money given by the government to them to be able to stay at home, and businesses have been helped. It's not the case here. There is not a safety system, social safety system, and I think here and in many countries that will certainly help a lot to ensure that children are not dropping out of school. They can eat, and they're not sent to work when they're 8, 9, 10, 12, because they need to help their families.
Okay, I see a comment here from Catalina Escobar. Violence of women and girls in Colombia is totally out of control.
True.
Any comments about that?
It's true. We just released a document with La Fundación Ideas para la Paz, who says that with the COVID it's getting worse, and it's not only in Colombia. It's true in Colombia, and what we do as Save the Children and everybody else is go against the belief that it's okay to do that. But it's not just Colombia. I think it's seeing everywhere in the world. I was listening to the French radio today, and one of the ministers was saying that, policemen had, before they were not so aware of having to do something when a woman called and say, I'm a victim of GBV, and now they have so many calls that they do almost only that. But before they were doing nothing. And there is a power balance now that is changing between men and women, and I think we need to continue to educate young adolescent girls and boys about what it means, and I think it has a lot to do with education. But it's true, it's on the rise, and it's getting worse, and it's not getting worse only in Colombia.
And we have a lot of high school students. We call it ninth grade, 10th grade, 11th grade, and 12th grade. And I work for an educational organization, and they say, Juanca, I want to volunteer, but because of the pandemic, I can't volunteer. I can't go to, places like La Guajira. We can travel around the world. Valerie, how can a student in high school can help an organization like yours? How can they volunteer?
There's many ways. I've always had students more in university, but for example, in Colombia, there is not a system for 9, 10, 11th grade to be able to volunteer. And usually when you do that is children who are in private school. But those who are in public school doesn't have access to that. And I think we need to engage more to ensure that there is politics and that help that 9, 10, 11 can start looking at what does it mean to work, what does it mean to do solidarity, and I think the generation, the millennial generation, is a generation who have a very low capacity for frustration, and I think they're going to resolve the world before they're 28. I think they have models who have shown them that you can become a millionaire at 25, which is not for everyone. I think this new generation, because of the COVID, have more frustration and have more ability for frustration, and they understand that they need to help. We're starting a volunteer program. We're going to be able to take much more volunteer because it's not only here, but a lot are asking for that, asking for volunteering. So we're thinking about how to do it. I think mentorship of children is something that will work. But again, a lot of children in Colombia have no access to internet. Or there are 5 in the family and they have one phone, and the mom and one mom is working all day and needs the phone to work, and is the only way that they can study. So there's still a lot to be done, but we're starting a volunteer program in Colombia. It's going to be out very soon, and then we will take more youth to help us and to do those exchanges.
Well, we want to hear more about it because we have a lot of students that are always asking, I want to volunteer. And this is an inspirational story. I've been in many little towns, municipios in Antioquia, and I noticed the coverage, is so bad that the only way for internet is just going to the local municipality. But even like Claro or all those companies that are providers, the signal is so weak. And there are a lot of those Chinese mobiles popping out around the world. And actually, our dear friend Rebecca Ziegler-Manu in Zimbabwe, I know she's going to be watching us. She said, Juanca, if you want to help us providing money for buying the SIM cards so our students can study through their smartphones. Have you guys approached any of these telecommunication companies to enhance to facilitate telecommunication throughout the country so that children can be educated?
Well, I work with Claro, and I work with Movistar, and they're doing a fair share of work. But don't forget how Colombia has 3 chains of mountains that are so high that, if you're in a flat country like France or, Holland, great, it's easier. But look at the geography of Colombia, and that makes it so difficult. So what we're trying to do is more to have tablets that you can upload. You can get a point where you can download whatever you need and the materials, and then you can get to the children and work with them. And the other thing we have done during the pandemic is we have done a lot of radio programs. So that in Colombia there is a lot of community radio that were actually from the army, and we work with them. And what we have done is program for the different grades that they could listen at certain hours. We have given solar radios that they could listen to it, because we also gave, and like a lot of other organization, Plan and World Vision and NRC, we have given guides and books. But for those children who are alone, they don't have their parents who can help them to go through the book. It was difficult. So what we have done is to do this radio program that they could listen to and go through the guide with the radio program. And we hope we have reached over 10 million children that could have listened to it, from La Guajira to Nariño.
Okay.
So it's always to be innovative. Innovation is not just to have the phone and the SIM card, but it's also to find a way that you get to the last children. And as one of the mojo of Save the Children is to the last boy and girl.
Valerie, I was reading your resume, your curriculum vitae, and you have a tremendous amount of experience of getting organization or governmental organizations with private organizations to sustain these 12 million children. What will be the amount of money required to fundraise to get these kids back into schools? I'm sorry.
What we have worked with the Ministry of Education here was just at the beginning of the pandemic to see how we can get at least the Venezuelan children into the system. So we were not even thinking that it was not only the Venezuelan, but all the children. And just for that, we need $90 million over 3 years.
$90 million just for that. So with
just 90 for the migrants. So if you think at the Migrant Plus,
okay. So there is not enough money here.
Yes, and also because I think what we're thinking through with the ministry and with other organizations is flexible system, because it's a very rigid system. It's based on the industry era where everybody, all children between 11 and 12 has to be 9, between 12, so they have to be, and they all learn the same thing at the same time during the year. And the flexible system is something that every government are working on more and more to ensure that if a children have a dropout a little bit, that we can get him back into the system. So I think that we're getting more and more towards flexible system that will allow to work in different ways, and I think that is what we need to do everywhere.
I have a question about Reforma Tributaria, the economical finance movement.
You remember what my grandmother said? Don't talk about politics, religion, and football. Okay,
so we won't talk about that then. But we're gonna have to need a lot of money. So if we can fundraise, how is your experience with the private sector in terms of fundraising in Colombia?
Well, it's something that have started really to kick in about 10, 15 years ago. And I think there is a lot of private sector who are now starting to understand how they can make a difference. I think that the millennials and small social innovation have helped a lot. And we need to connect all that. We need to connect the big industry with the small ones and with us. And I think it's getting better every day. We still have a lot of work to do because everybody has his own agenda. So the problem is, as a humanitarian worker, you usually work under the agenda of who give you the money, and is to kind of being able to sell that is not about what you want to do, but is about what is needed and how we can bring that together. So there's still a lot of work to do around that. Another issue you have with the private sector, if you can write a very good program and they tell you, we're going to help you, and then suddenly they change their policy, they change the way they want to do it, and they left you to dry without an exit strategy. So that is something that still needs to be worked. But I think it's getting better and better, and there is a better understanding from the private sector every day on how to really make a difference. The prime, again, is to reconcile agendas.
Okay. We have a question here. Around the world, BAC takes 5% of the world's GDP. Has that changed? Any idea of statistics during the pandemic?
Sorry, I didn't understand the question.
Around the world, BAC takes 5% of the world's GDP. Has that changed any idea of statistics during the pandemic?
No, I don't have this kind of statistic. I didn't know you're going to ask me a lot of statistic question. If not, I will have a presentation with all that because it's scattered everywhere.
And that comes from the audience, from somebody that is watching from Cata
But
Escobar.
it's clear for us that when we do case management of children, and what we have done is during the pandemic, we couldn't go to see any of our beneficiaries. So we have continued following them through WhatsApp or going in front of their houses. But it's true that what we're seeing is that the violence against children is on the rise, is staying at home and be indoors and having parents who don't find a job, who cannot get money. You know, things get bad in the families, and we're very vigilant of that. But having a statistic, because usually it's closed doors, so it's very difficult to get statistic on that.
Okay.
But I can have a look at if we have some. But we know that during the pandemic is on the high, and we see, because we work with children, and we go to the settlements of the Venezuelan, and we go also to see the children in the school in Nariño for the conflict. That the fact that they're staying home and they can't go out doesn't make things easy for them. That's for sure.
Okay. Valerie, Save the Children. We have a goal here of 12 million children that are at risk in Colombia, and I'm very concerned about that number. I'm sure the government is really concerned about that number. Will $500 million will help?
How much?
500 million to sustain a reasonable program to save the children in
Yes,
Colombia?
of course.
Yes.
Yes, of course.
And how far will that money go through?
What it has to do with planning. As I say, we had a goal of 90 million over 3 years just for the Venezuelan population children, and for 500 million, I'm sure you can do, but that means that you have, again, to reconcile agendas. You have to bring everybody to the table, and a little bit this program we did with called Education Cannot Wait is about how we bring everybody around the table for the education of children, and ensuring that all children have access to education and have access to quality education.
Okay, if you have a choice of building parks, stadiums, you have $500 million that are given to you, and you have to have many outcomes with those $500 million. Would you apply that money into infrastructure, or would you apply that money into education and helping these children?
Both, because you need infrastructure for the schools. You have a lot of schools in Colombia are falling apart, and you need those places. And I will put a bit on research on how we can each time go better, and also take all what we have around this technology and what's going on to make sure that we get the best education to all the children, and exchanges. And you can do, $500 million, we can do a lot of things.
Well, that's one of the tasks, and I know, we're coming into elections very soon, and I'm just thinking, my brain goes through and I say, how in the world are we gonna have a sustainable government here that is gonna help not only the 12 million children, we have the elderly population that, is at risk. We have the middle class that is decreasing. We have a country that has tremendous amount of pressure right now, and we have a neighbor that is in deep crisis for the last 20 years. And this 12 million number worries me a lot, because that population is so vulnerable that the country could collapse and the infrastructure could collapse if we as Colombians and people can help the country to just go back to a different scenario. And we're seeing that in Chile right now, that how the country is collapsing right now.
Yes, but I've been in and out of Colombia for the last 25 years, and I came 4 times.
Yes.
I was there during the Zona de Distensión. I was here when they took the International Red Cross. I was here when the Transmilenio started, and I see how Colombia have evolved, and it's a country that amazes me every day on the resilience of its population and of its people. So part of me, and maybe I'm a fool and an optimist and too much of an optimist, but it's a country who have always find a way to kind of rebound and have an extraordinary resilience. So that made me feel that a lot of things that are possible in Colombia, and as much as education is very important, sometimes you have a lot of youth in Colombia who have gone to university in Europe and anywhere else to get master degree, two master degree, and are now in heavy debt. And I think we also have an opportunity here with the COVID to kind of level the playing field and also give experience to youth and given this idea that you can have education plus experience and get a lot of things out of it instead of putting so much pressure on people of 25 or 20 years old that needs to have a master degree when they're 20 and they're in debt for the next 30 years. And you saw that in the US. And it's also happening here.
Yes.
So yeah, I think education is important. I think we need to continue and make sure that those children doesn't drop out. But I think Colombia have this ability to kind of rebound and find new ways, and it's a country who has a lot to offer. As you saw in my Facebook, I walk a lot. Colombia. I decided with my husband, my daughter, that we wanted to know Colombia before there is too many tourists, because it's going to be a very touristic country. And it's a beautiful country, and I think it's going to rebound, and the resilience of Colombia is going to show the world that, you know, it's a force to be reckoned with.
I love your positivism. Can you be honest and tell us which one is that area in Colombia that you think that is going to be an explosion on tourism?
All of them. And
All
yes,
of it.
you know, education is always important, and it's always been important, but there is different of education, and not just the one that imposes you to be in debt forever or for 20 years. So there is many ways of getting access to education, and that's why I think flexible education is going to be so important. But there is not a place in Colombia that you're not going to be amazed. And because of this over 50 years of war, there are so many places that nobody have seen before that you're going to be able, you know, to see things that you won't see in anywhere else. I come from a city called Paris that I never get lost, because it's like living in a huge museum. Nothing changed because everything is protected. But when you come to Colombia, everything changed, and you can see the wonder of this country. You are in Bogota and you're cold, and then there's the sun and you're super hot, and then you're cold again, and you go 1 hour away from Bogota and you're 38 degrees, or you can be in the middle of the forest. So everything in Colombia will be a tourist place.
Have you been to Guatapé?
Of course.
And you like it?
Yes, I have a friend who worked with me, and she's Turkish, and she bought a small lot in Guatapé, and she wants to go and live there.
Well, you're welcome to come and visit us anytime you want. You will see that.
It's a beautiful place.
And what's your favorite Colombian dish or Colombian dishes, delicacies?
Well, you know, ajiaco was for a long time, but that is another thing that Colombia is changing a lot, is that there is a lot of incorporation of some fruits that you don't see anywhere else into the cooking of Colombia. There is a lot of great cooks. My daughter is coming to see what we're doing.
Tell her.
And now that it's amazing also what kind of dishes and new cooking you find in Colombia that incorporate the Pacific way of cooking with the Andean way of cooking, and there is this amazing new ways of cooking, and you can discover a lot of fruits that nobody knew about before. Come from
You like bandeja paisa?
Not
It's
my
too
favorite.
heavy.
It's a little bit heavy for me, but you know, independently, I really like it.
Okay. Well, I better cook for you one day, and we will invite you in Medellin. I know we're running short of time, but I have a question for you. When I was watching your TED Talk, you mentioned in español, nos escondemos en las redes sociales. Y en las redes sociales se vomita información. Can you talk a little bit that people hide on social media and they just vent everything? Let's talk about that.
Look, I remember was my daughter is 17. She's going to start university in 4 months, if pandemic allows. And we were in a restaurant because I used to have a lunch with her every week to just have a one-to-one daughter mother. And we sit in a restaurant, and this couple comes in, and they sit down and newlyweds, and they talk a little bit, and then they weigh their beer, and they're looking at each other or looking up and down. They don't have anything to say to each other. and then suddenly she takes her phones out, ready to make a selfie, and he looks on the picture, and I said to my daughter, look at them, and they're taking that picture, and they're smiling with their beer, and like, we're so in love, blah blah blah, and then she put her phone down, and they have nothing to tell to each other.
Oh, wow.
And I explained to my daughter, this is what people put into Facebook is the happy moment, and trying to avoid those sad moments. And the sad moment is also what makes us, and you can't avoid and try to make think on the social media that you're only these happy moments, and there is nothing in between. And I think is what worries me a lot is that people put their opinion, 1 second opinion of what they think about you or somebody else, or the mood they have in the moment, and forget that it can hurt somebody, it can be not true, it can be not the real story, and we saw it with what happened in the US in different places during the pandemic, people who were against the mask or for the mask, and against the vaccine and for the vaccine, and we have forgot to really go and compare information. Or in the US, or you look at CNN or you look at Fox, but there is nothing in between. So we become radicalized in social media on, I have an opinion and my opinion is the right one because I put it outside, but you forgot that it has an impact on others. And that is what I don't like. So that's why I say we vomit how we feel in the social media, but we forgot to kind of think through. And I think the fact that we have philosophers and we have heroes and we have people is because we listen to them, we read about them, and we also, in my time, you used to have two people who have a different opinion in the same newspaper, and you could say, okay, why he says that, he disagree with that, but you will agree to disagree, and you will respect the person who disagree with you. We don't do that anymore with social media.
So we have a lot of homework here to do. Number one, we need to fundraise $500 million. So for real, we gotta save the children of Colombia and save the children around the world. We have enough private funding to fundraise that. We have enough resources to fundraise that, and we gotta work on that culture. So that's the number one thing, and let's see how we can help you with that fundraising. Number two, you just mentioned that we have to be optimistic. Colombia will rebound. Hola, Adri Gomez from Medellin, Colombia. Colombia will rebound, and we're gonna make a better country. So we could all be influencers posting good things on our social media about Colombia. So whether we're talking about Paipa, Guatapé, Nariño, and things like that. But we need those 12 million tablets with internet connection, so our children could be our influencers around in Colombia. And number three, Valerie, we need to meet together and do a cooking lesson here to see. Maybe your French cuisine is so delicious that I don't know, and I will be happy to cook for you guys in Bogota when I go there.
Fantastic. And we have to learn to respect others' opinions. Very important.
Correct. We gotta respect that. I remember when I was in elementary school, we had a course, very simple course called Urbanidad. And like civility. We need more civility, and we need to embed those courses back from elementary all the way to 12th grade. But we have a lot of work to do. We gotta be in good spirits. Leo was absolutely correct. You are a gem. You are a courageous woman, being with the Tutsis in Rwanda, coming to Cambodia, Nepal, then you're going to Colombia, and so many countries where even in Paris, there is conflict resolution. Even in London, there is conflict resolution. But you took the lead at a very young age and say, I want to help the children. I want to work for equality and balance. And that's what we all got to do. You are very inspirational, and I really want to thank you for your time. I know you wake up super early in the morning, so I do apologize for the time, but we're thrilled to have you here, and you can always come back.
No, thank you very much for having me, and anytime you need me, as Leo knows, he calls me many times, and I'm here for anyone who have a follow-up question. Please make sure to send it to me, and thank you to all the one who have connected.
And I know our dear friends around the world, I mean, they're sleeping right now, but this video will be housed on YouTube, also on IGTV, and we will get to see, probably your TED Talk has thousands of viewers yet, but it will be housed on IGTV, YouTube, and thank you, Valerie Dourdin, for coming, and I hope to meet you in person back in Bogota.
Will be my pleasure. Take care.
Okay, take care. Buenas noches
everyone.
para todos. Muchas gracias. Gracias.
Ciao, ciao.
JCT for education.